Adam Rittenberg joins us right now, ESPN college football senior writer. Give him a follow on Twitter or X, ESPN Rittenberg. Adam, thanks so much, man, for giving us some time on a Friday night. I actually want to start off in the SEC with Texas. I'm a big Sark guy. I think the Arch hype is real. What do you think, though? I mean, they're like plus 550. They're the favorites to win the SEC. Where are you at with Texas? Do you think they're a little overrated coming into the season, or would they be your pick to win the SEC?
Yeah, I think they're right there. Having made the SEC championship game last year, they've built a roster to not just win the SEC, but win their first national championship in 20 years. Sark's done a great job recruiting and doing well in the portal, and they have depth at a lot of key positions. Still interested in how they replace some of their offensive linemen who moved on to the NFL. That's a group that has really thrived under Sark and Kyle Flood, his offensive coordinator. And then certainly Arch, it's just an incredible amount of hype for a guy who really barely played or threw the ball in the second half of last season. But you talk to people around the SEC and they really felt like he was ultimately the more talented quarterback. They just, were very loyal to Quinn Ewers the last couple of years. So it'll be exciting to see how Arch performs. But the roster absolutely is set up from their defensive line or really front seven with guys like Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill Jr., Michael Taff in the back end. And, again, they've done really well just with collecting elite prospects and some really impactful transfers. So, I do a 2-year projection of the best teams in the country, and I wrote for ESPN not long ago that if Texas doesn't win a national title in the next 2 years, especially if Arch plays both of those years, it will be a significant disappointment given what they've invested in the program under Sark.
Adam, Rob Brown, great to talk to you, man. I think it's fair to have questions about Arch. I also think it's fair to have questions about a team Ryan and I were talking about earlier, the Miami Hurricanes. Mario Cristobal, to me, maybe the biggest, most unforgivable sin, that Georgia Tech loss last year. I was at ACC Media Days last week, and there were two groups, man. There was a group that think that Miami is easily the number one challenger to Clemson in the conference, and then there's a group that does not trust Mario Cristobal to get them back into that position. So I'll ask this as eloquently as I can. What the hell are the Miami Hurricanes this year?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think from a talent standpoint, they are that team that's closest to Clemson, especially if Carson Beck, coming in from Georgia, more closely resembles the quarterback we saw in 2023 than the one who struggled with decision-making and interceptions for a stretch in the 2024 season before his injury. So if we get the older version or the 2023 version of Beck with Shannon Dawson as the offensive coordinator and a really powerful unit, they will be the top challenger to Clemson. But that comes with a caveat, and the fact that Miami has just found ways to fall short in this league. Even last year, unable to beat Syracuse on the road and likely punch its ticket to the college football playoffs. So you have to look at other teams in that conference as challengers, whether it's a Louisville team that I didn't think was far away from that point, under Jeff Brom, who always does a nice job with his quarterbacks and has shown the ability to win big games. SMU obviously made the playoff last year. They bring back their quarterback in Kevin Jennings, some good defensive players returning for Rhett Lashley, or maybe it's a surprise team. Like we're not, Pitt is very interesting to me actually. So, but in terms of just talent and the roster that they've compiled, Miami looks like that number one challenger.
Man, I'm with you on Pitt. I don't know that they could win the ACC, but I like them to go over the win total. I really like Desmond Reed a lot. Let's move over to the Big Ten. I keep saying, man, if Penn State, if James Franklin can at least make it to the title game, and I know they were in the playoff last year with this team, with Kotelnicki calling plays, what they do in the offseason. I thought they really won the offseason. Would they be your pick, Penn State, in the Big Ten and to win the national title?
Yeah, I mean, they're my pick in the Big Ten. I don't know if I'd pick them to win the national title, but it is a if not now when type of feeling with this team, because you look at the other teams that were in the college football playoff semifinal, or just in that field in general, the number of draft picks that Ohio State lost, 14, a record-tying 14. Texas, I believe, had 12. Oregon had 10. going to the NFL. Penn State didn't have as many. I mean, Abdul Carter is certainly a big loss, but they have other players that are ready to step in who were impactful during the playoff run. I mean, two guys that jumped out to me during that push were Denai Dennis Sutton, the other defensive end, and then Zakee Wheatley, their safety, was just outstanding in those final couple of playoff games. And they have others who have been around, and they bring back their quarterback. They don't have to have a quarterback reset or an offensive coordinator reset, and arguably they had an upgrade on the defensive side. I think Tom Allen's a great coordinator, but a lot of people think Jim Knowles is the best defensive coordinator in the country. So, a schedule that certainly sets up favorably. They won't be challenged until Oregon comes to State College at the end of September. They do have to go to Columbus, but they don't have some of the other top contenders in the Big Ten on the schedule. So I think it's a really important year for Penn State to maximize its talent level and to win the big games. And if they do, they should have a great opportunity to win their first national title since 1986.
Adam, I'm going to be super duper selfish here and ask you about the Gamecocks of South Carolina. I'm down here in the upstate of South Carolina. I'm all in on Lenore Sellers. I think he is the only proven commodity in a conference in the SEC that is full of teams that could be very good but have questions about quarterback. I know they've got issues with the run game, still waiting to find out if they're going to get their waiver for Rayson Fashul. I know that the offensive line might not be what Shane Beamer hoped it would be. I still think it's a very good team, and I think defensively they've got some dudes. Is this team in any way, shape, or form a dark horse contender for the Southeastern Conference? Can this team find its way, even if it's in the 12th spot, into the college football playoffs this year?
Well, I think if they do, Lenore Sellers is going to have to be that dude, like you mentioned. And I think he's an interesting guy to ask coaches about. There's some that really love him, and there's some that say, hey, he's great for a couple of incredible plays a game, but will he be able to get it done series after series, quarter after quarter, game after game? And will he have the strong enough supporting cast? I mean, the defense could be good, but they lost a lot to the NFL. They sent a lot of guys to the combine. They didn't have as many guys drafted, but they had a number of guys end up as free agents. And that side of the ball is having to reload a little bit, other than a guy in Dylan Stewart, certainly one of the better young pass rushers in college football. But Lenore Sellers is going to have to be a little more consistent as a passer and make guys around him better. Will that supporting cast, you mentioned the O-line, will guys like Nick Harbour and those receivers be explosive enough to not just win a game like Texas A&M, but be able to take down the Alabama team that they were very close to beating, or LSU, or in those types of teams? Because if you can't, you're not going to win the SEC. I think most coaches I talk to believe that Garrett Nussmeier is the safer quarterback to kind of ride with in the SEC, but they also have great respect for Lenoris and his talent level and his size. I mean, I interviewed him this spring in Columbia. He is a very, very impressive person, even outside of uniform.
I want to go back to Nussmeier and LSU. Their win total is 8.5, Adam, and I had to bet it. I'm a Notre Dame guy, man. So I just feel like, obviously, this is a big year for Brian Kelly. Coach O, I joked earlier, coached the best team in college football history, and after a down year got canned pretty early. So I don't know if he's on the hot seat, but I feel like they have to at least win 9 games. I mean, the defensive side of the ball, I know the last couple of years has been a little bit of a mess, but you had Jaden Daniels. Now you have Garrett Nussmeier, and it's year 5 of eligibility when Daniels won the Heisman. Where are you at with LSU? Do you think this could be a playoff team? You have Harold Perkins coming back from an injury, or do you think it'll be another disappointing season for them?
Yeah, I mean, if it's around 8.5 wins, or I guess it'd be 8 or 9 wins, that's a disappointing season. LSU. Yep. We at ESPN ranked them as having the best offseason in the country with what they did in the portal, recruiting, the staff retention. There's not a lot of changes on BK staff. And, some of the guys they brought in, I mean, a guy like Mansour Delane from Virginia Tech, they are over the moon about what he could be. And think about it, LSU has not had, even though they have an incredible history on in the secondary, they haven't really been DBU for a while. And are they going to get back to that with a guy like Delane at cornerback and some of the other? Overall, that should be a real strength for them. And then Garrett Nussmeier, 4,000-yard passing season, should have a better receiving core to throw to. good running back group? Can the offensive line reload after losing some really good players at tackle to the NFL? And then they have that difficult opening stretch where they have Clemson and Florida very, very early in the season. How do they navigate those two games? If they can get through that, I really do like their chances. And, again, if you're Brian Kelly, you've done a lot of great things in your career, but your three predecessors by year 4 at LSU had already won the national championship. So there is tremendous pressure on Brian Kelly to get to the playoff for the first time and ideally make a run, especially with a quarterback as experienced and talented as Garrett Nussmeier is.
Speaking of pressure, there's not any, I don't think, on my next head coach, Adam, to win now or you're done. But I also know pressure comes from being the dude that follows the dude. I'm in on Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. I think they got some dogs. I know the media at SEC Media Days picked them 3rd in the conference behind Texas and Georgia. I think that is abundantly fair, but I also know a lot of people in that room were heavily pushing back on that, saying they just don't have the talent like they used to. Where do you stick the Crimson Tide in the SEC and in the national picture?
Well, I think Kalen DeBoer will be much more comfortable, I think, in this year, with the roster, with what he wants to do on the offensive side of the ball. Ryan Grubb is back as his offensive coordinator. They made magic happen at Washington, getting to the national title game a couple of years ago with Michael Penix Jr. Is Ty Simpson or one of those quarterbacks that type of player? Can they have some balance in their offense so they're not hanging their defense out to dry like they did? Those sudden change situations, some of the mistakes that were made on the offensive side of the ball last year. I think that's going to be really, really important because, in terms of personnel, yes, it's still really good. It doesn't jump out the way that Texas's personnel is right now, or Georgia's always seems to be under Kirby Smart. So I think for Kalen to have success there, he needs his quarterback to be one of the better players in the SEC. That he needs that passing attack with Ryan Williams and others to be one of the better groups in the SEC. And so I'm excited to see how they look with Florida State right off the bat on the road. They also get Wisconsin coming into Tuscaloosa, and then you get into SEC play. The thing about last year's Alabama team, they won some big games. They beat Georgia. They beat South Carolina, a very good South Carolina team as it turned out. They absolutely annihilated LSU. It was the consistency, guys. It was losing to Vanderbilt. It was an inexcusable performance against Oklahoma with a college football playoff berth on the line, and an almost equally inexcusable performance against Michigan in a bowl game when Michigan could barely field the team. You just can't have that at Alabama with the pride and the investment they make in that program. So I think the consistency component is going to be really, really important, and so much of it comes down to quarterback play.
Adam, unfortunately, we only got about 90 seconds, and you might need longer to answer this question because there's probably 3 or 4 teams, maybe more, you can make the case for. Who would be your pick today here, August 1st, to win the Big 12?
Yeah, definitely more than 90 seconds. I would certainly start. I think TCU. I'll give you a team. TCU is one that I think under the radar has a real opportunity. Coaches love Josh Hoover and his potential coming off of a really good finish to last year. So wouldn't count out a team like the Horned Frogs. The winner of the game in Dublin, Ireland is going to be a very interesting position, whether it's Kansas State with Avery Johnson or Rocco Becht with Iowa State. And then, again, Arizona State right now is still the team to beat. And then obviously Texas Tech with the investment that they made. This is a team that's built to win in 2025, and that we'll see if they can get it done with all those big-time transfers coming in.
Adam, thanks so much, man, for giving us some time on a Friday night. We will be paying attention to your work, and hopefully we can do this again soon before we kick off the season.
You bet, guys. Thanks for having me.
Adam Rittenberg right there, senior writer, college football for ESPN. You could also hear him on SiriusXM, college sports on SiriusXM. Really great stuff. Dude, the Big 12 is wide open. I ended up betting a couple win totals. I like Kansas State. But I feel like if Kansas State is – I feel like the better bet is Avery Johnson, 50-1 to win the Heisman, right? He could throw for 3,000, rush for another 1,000. right? But Texas Tech went all in, $250 million, I believe, in that new stadium. They spent the second most in NIL. They're going all in this year.